Welcome to Authenticity Unleashed. I'm your host, Pam Rader, and I'm here with an exquisite guest today,
Mm.
Jaclyn Robertson, who is the founder of Okanagan Lifestyle. She is a mama and a wife and a friend to many, and most of all, a holder up, if you will, of community.
Oh,
I am so deeply grateful to have you here today. And I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time because you are a woman of depth. So thank you
oh,
for being here.
oh, thank you for those words, Pam. A holder upper of community. I love that. And a woman of depth coming from you really and sincerely means a lot. Thank you for those words. I appreciate and I echo all of those back in your direction. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So
Yeah.
I have a few things. I would first love for you to just kind of tell a little bit about your journey because you had a very unique idea for a business that wasn't just about business. And it's become something so much more than even what you envisioned. And
True.
so
Yeah.
would you just share a little bit about your journey? Because I think that it's inspiring for people to see you don't have to walk the same path as everyone else.
Yeah, very true. I mean, so when I wrote the business plan for Okanagan Lifestyle Apparel, 11 years ago now. I was mentioning to you in a previous conversation, I was working one woman of 153 men in the oil and gas industry in Fort McMurray and not necessarily living my most ideal Okanagan lifestyle at that time, but had a very clear intentional vision for my life and path forward. Having very close family ties to the Okanagan region and with the depth of knowing you spoke about depth of that I have long felt like my best self when I'm existing in the Okanagan region, my most aligned, my most authentic, most creative, most empowered, most supported. And so I wanted to create something in a business form that would uh, really and truly bring people together, that would connect people, that would spark infinite collaboration.
Mhm.
And 10 years ago, we foresaw that apparel and accessories could be a vehicle to create some immense positive change in the region that we wanted to, my husband and I, grow and raise a family. And so we wrote the business plan for this business
Can I
that,
just pause you for a second? Because that's so brilliant. What you did
yeah.
there, and this is so rare in business, instead of starting with an idea for a business, you started with an idea for an outcome, and then you
Mm,
reverse engineered it.
absolutely. Yeah,
Do
I
you even
love
know
that
how
you
brilliant
see.
that is?
Well, perhaps an insight into my lens. I have long been aware of that I am this way from the time I was a young girl, very impact driven,
Mm.
very passionate about the energy that I bring into spaces and how me as one single person can walk into a room and with my presence, my ideas, my creativity, my work ethic, how I can impact the world around me. And I know you're someone who also believes in this concept of kind of start where you are. And so I suppose this brand that really began, with it started with some garments in a box out of the back seat of my car a decade ago, turned into a very important to me community movement to bring people together. And I'm just so honored and grateful for what it's become and for the way the community has sunk their hearts into this mission and how we work collaboratively to hold each other up. I know you spoke about me at the beginning of like a holder up of community,
Mm.
but it requires a root system. And, we've been talking about this in community a little bit. It requires, I can't hold us all up on my own. It's been such a community effort building this particular business for community. And I just feel grateful every day for the people that I get opportunity to kind of stand alongside and grow alongside and learn alongside. It's been the honor of a lifetime, really.
What's the ultimate vision for Okanagan Lifestyle Apparel?
Oh, that's a good question. The ultimate vision, we're coming into this really beautiful life cycle as a business, coming into a decade. And the ultimate vision is clear. And I would say where we're at present day, it's happening. We're hosting things in this experiential retail shop that I always dreamt of when we started it. Didn't know how exactly I was going to get there, but to be hosting quarterly open community counseling sessions out of
Hmm.
a safe feeling incubator feels like a dream come true. I mean,
Tell us
this
a
was
little
the
bit more
ultimate.
about
Yeah.
that. How did that come about, and why is that so close to your heart? So tell us a little bit
Mhm.
about this open space community counseling, what it is, and then how did you connect with that? Why is it close to your heart? And then a little bit more about how you open up your space to everyone else, because that's also so unique.
Well, I am an interesting weave of a woman, Pam. I,
Yes, you are.
so my background, I suppose my academic career was spent studying the two things that I'm the most sincerely passionate about, and that is people and psychology and communication. And so my degrees are in English and in psychology. And I love understanding people in unique ways. And I foresaw opportunity for us to utilize, what we have created in this really beautiful, intentionally designed retail space that for me is, and for my family is quite sincerely a home away from home, to welcome people into it in a way where we could have authentic conversation
Mhm.
and conversation that lifts each other up with very, experts who are highly regarded and highly educated and can really move the needle in positive ways. And so in the post, running a business through pandemic was such a fascinating experience. and
I loved
in
how you're so positive. It was fascinating.
Oh, well, I also love research. So for me, through it was just, it really, I did find it quite fascinating, just observing what happened and observing people and
Mhm.
observing myself in, okay,
Mhm.
how was I made to feel when I'm someone who I'm kind of self-defined as like quite people powered.
Mhm.
I love being amongst community. And so through something like a global pandemic, when, you know, globally we're very isolated. I found from a psychology lens just so interesting what that did to collective mental health, and in particular, I mean, my focus is again start where you are within the Okanagan region. It changed our community like it did many communities,
Mhm.
and so in post-pandemic world when we could be back together again, we got up to all kinds of innovative things like, the first week the restrictions were lifted in pandemic, we built a climbing wall inside of our store and had a 3-month installment of a climbing wall where people could come and kind of, burn up the wall, get their heart rate going, and while resting amongst climbing, in climbing culture, if you climb, you know that it's such a unique sport in the sense of there's a lot of conversation, there's a
Mm.
lot of cheering each other on. When you're not climbing on the wall, you kind of sit and you observe other people climbing on the wall. And there's a lot of falling and a lot of getting back up and celebrating of that.
Mhm.
And so it was this kind of interesting, creative installment that we put inside the store. That was kind of, my first aha moment of what we could creatively create to bring people together in a unique way when coming together in community mattered so much. And then, of course, we designed a fun collection with one of the key designers within Nice Climbing Gym, which I hold in high regard in our community. So that was excellent. And then, in furtherance to that, doing things like, pulling in some of our city's most brilliant clinical counselors
Mm.
to have conversation once a quarter and, have um, experiential opportunity for folks to utilize their voice in an anonymous way. So everyone can use their phone to kind of vote on questions that the clinical counselors ask at the front. And then we put
Mm.
up a big board on the wall where everyone can kind of see where is our community at in certain topics. Every quarter we discuss a different topic, and the ripple effect of what we've created with these counseling sessions has been quite beautiful to observe. Anywhere from 40 to 60 human beings doing kind of counseling sessions together and learning from one another and getting curious and, normalizing, you know, health and wealth and authenticity.
I love everything about what you're saying. And I too was fascinated through the pandemic because I study human behavior. Much like you, I'm all about impact and freedom, but not just freedom for me, what creates freedom for all human beings. And that's where my work is focused and dedicated to. And I also witnessed myself in some interesting ways and shocked myself at my own reactions and thoughts throughout that, and had to work really hard
Yeah.
to like get really aligned. But what I see through all of that is that there are so many more real conversations happening as a result
Yeah.
of the people who did look inward and maybe were a little surprised at themselves, and the fact that we have these spaces to have conversations in community, it's so incredibly important right now because the conversations were so divided for so long. We forgot as a society how to have in-depth conversations about touchy things. And I think that you having a safe space with a beautiful format and inviting people in to be nourished and nurtured and cared for reminds us that each one of us has a point of view. And every one of us, our point of view is valid, but it may not be complete. Our point of views are they're valid from where we stand. You said start where we are, like where my life created a point of view. But if I were to go stand in someone else's shoes, that person's point of view is just as valid as mine. And so I love that you've created a space where everyone's point of view can be valued. And then I don't have to defend my point of view, but I might collect some of yours.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Yeah. I agree with you in the sense of I celebrate the introspection that's
Mhm,
happened
mhm,
collectively, globally,
mhm.
and the polarity of almost, dangerous levels of introspection on the same hand.
Yeah.
And so those who are really, digging deep, I like that you kind of started off this conversation with the word depth,
Mhm,
can, offer up those communication skills in being brave and,
mhm,
going first. And, well, I'm curious about this. Let's have a conversation on it. And we might not have to agree
mhm.
entirely on insert any topic here, but we can still go the mile in talking and discussing about it. And so,
Yeah, I
yeah.
love that. So I have a question for you. Now, I have been blessed to be able to be at several events at your space. I saw
Mm.
a music event, which was lovely on Valentine's Day.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
I've been to some wine, women, and well-being events there, and some talks. And every time there's just this warmth and this sense of welcoming, and you can feel your welcoming energy. It's like being welcomed into someone's home. And that's not just you, that's your whole team. So you've created a
Oh.
culture within your organization. And tell me a little bit about the culture of Okanagan Lifestyle Apparel and its impact.
Oh, yeah, I would love to. I am someone who I have a high standard when it comes to that to team culture and how we nurture that very tenderly. And for me, as I've had opportunity to build out a team to support in growing this brand for the region, for me, it's really come down to, the authenticity of these human beings and them being fully on board with what it is that we're doing as a brand above and beyond, the selling and marketing of gear that represents our region.
Mhm,
They really are fully motivated by that community care element.
Mhm.
As individuals, they have, just an incredible um, list, each of them, of their own leadership skills and what they do within our business, but also outside of our business, and what they care about. And so I'm quite honored to, lead a team of leaders, and I am a better leader for getting opportunity to work alongside each of them. I say that with the utmost sincerity. They are incredible humans who are very passionate and have a lot of yeah, just care for community and beautiful work ethic, just incredibly hungry and humble and kind. And it's quite a high honor to get to work beside them and grow my family alongside their families. It's kind of a unique thing about our region is that, we're still small enough. We're growing, but we're small enough that, there's only a few degrees of separation between each of us here in this region.
Mhm.
And that's part of our charm, in my humble opinion, that, you can know someone's mother and grandmother or daughter or sister. And
Mhm.
so how we show up in the world in this region, it matters to me a lot. How our team shows up when they're hosting anything in the
Mhm.
shop matters to me a lot. Um,
It's
yeah.
definitely, well, it's definitely apparent, but you didn't give yourself as much credit as I would like to because I teach corporate leadership development and I work with leaders all day long. And you just innately have this wisdom that a lot of people don't. And I like to use this analogy. If someone's investing in a business, the business can have all the systems and all the, on the business plan and all of that.
Yeah.
That's the business is the horse, but I invest in the jockey because if the jockey doesn't know how to ride the horse,
Yeah.
then
Great
it can
analogy.
go awry. And so you are an extraordinary jockey because you have great vision. And what you just said there, and I want people to really get this because it's part of my mission in the world to help people understand this, and that is when you are the leader of a business, it's so important that your vision is big enough to hold the vision of the people that you care for, of the people that you lead. And it's very clear that you do that, the way that you speak about it, that you care about their visions and you hold their visions and you help nurture their visions and you keep expanding your vision so it's big enough to include theirs. And I think that's extraordinary.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I feel as though that's a pinch of our joint friend Dan Martell, who says this as well. Make
Yeah.
sure if you're building a business that that vision is big enough to fit other people's dreams and goals within it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, I am working alongside some really beautiful dreamers who have some incredible goals.
And
And
long before Dan Martell said that, you had that in your heart. You knew it. You had an
yeah,
intuition and
yeah,
a way of operating that was just all yours. But I think
yeah.
that success leads clues, and it's good to pull that apart so that other people can take that and say, oh, Jaclyn's not successful by luck. Jaclyn's not,
Oh,
Okanagan Lifestyle is not successful because of their timing. There's this
mhm.
beautiful quality um, that you bring to the game that
Thanks.
that ensures that the success that you have had will continue. And I think that you've got to take credit for that. Um,
Oh, thanks, Pam.
there's great coaches that call it something, but you had it in you
Yeah.
long before it had a name.
Oh, thanks for that compliment. Like I kind of said before, I am such an interesting weave of a woman who has been through such a grand amount in my short time earthside thus far. And
Mhm.
so the wisdom in me really comes from just an interesting collection of experiences that I've been handed over the course of my life, including being caretaker for my father over the last 15 years of my life, he was also an entrepreneur. And,
Mhm.
watching him and his cadence of being a visionary and a business owner. And so I'm constantly very aware, self-aware of my cadence, of my dreaming and my efforting. And
Say more about that. Like I'm curious.
yeah.
Cadence. Like what comes to my. I'm really kind of exploring being counter hustle culture these days. and
Yeah.
having a sustainable cadence to my offerings and my work and all of that. Is that what
Key,
you're referring to?
yes, absolutely. Keyword sustainable and pace. I mean,
Mhm,
I'm very aware of the fact that if I go down, if I hit burnout, which I have been there before in my life, that,
mhm,
that affects everything in a person's life.
mhm,
And so monitoring very carefully, the stretching and the reaching for my
mhm,
goals, that they are not small in my life. But I watched as my father, as a business owner, in the very height of his career, at the very young age of 52, um, suffered a massive stroke and lost all ability to walk and to talk. And so then to put a long story short, then had opportunity to be his advocate for 15 years, to carry his voice inside my voice. And I learned a lot,
mm,
like more than probably I would have wanted to in the timing that I learned it. But at the same time, it has set me up for an immense amount of success in my life. But because of that experience and seeing
mhm,
him probably have a cadence of living life that was a little bit too far reaching,
mhm,
not sustainable,
mhm,
over the course of a long period of time. I mean, it comes in waves, right?
mhm,
Sometimes you're reaching and it's nice to have, the knowing of where is your edge. We have a collective passion for yoga. And
mhm,
so it's, where is your edge? It's that sweet spot between allowing yourself to surprise yourself in what this your own strength, but
mhm.
then also not being afraid to, fall out of a posture or in life.
Yeah.
And it's that finding of the edge constantly in life for me that I find fascinating and exciting, and but always aware, where is my edge today? Where might it be tomorrow? And
Mhm,
revisiting that as often as possible, so that I can be living as authentically as humanly possible for me, for my family, for my comrades and my
mhm.
friends. And yeah,
So you just said something really so beautiful there. Living authentically for me, for my family, for my comrades, for my friends. When your dad had a stroke and became unable to speak and communicate, you so kindly said, I became his advocate, and and I'm sure that was a heavy weight on your shoulders. I believe in past I've heard you say you were like 19 or something, really
I was
young.
19. Yeah, I was 19 when I became my father's voice, still
Yeah.
finding my own voice as a young woman. So it was like a 1-2 punch finding of our voice scenario.
But you did something really extraordinary in that. Uh, and at 19, we're very much about me. I don't know. We don't even have our frontal lobe completely connected yet. We're very much about me. And it moved you into the space of we, from me to we at 19 years
Yeah.
old, which is very interesting. And that's a lot for a 19-year-old, but you've held that space so beautifully. Did you always have such a positive attitude about it? It's a lot of
Um,
responsibility.
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I rode the waves of it,
Mhm,
as we do many things in life.
mhm,
There were some moments when I equate it to maybe surfing. I love to surf. There
mhm,
were days in my journey of riding those waves where it felt like I was paddling all day,
mhm,
you know, just
mhm,
trying to catch a break.
mhm.
And, you have to monitor your mindset
Right.
constantly. And was it always so gracefully traveled? No, not necessarily. Um, and that's okay. I
Yeah.
really gave myself, and the people around me really gifted me the ability to, some days travel it gracefully and some days not so much. And an example of this, I remember so vividly. So I was a freshman in university. I was semester one in
Mhm,
university at UBC here in the Okanagan when this shift happened in my life. And I remember being very self aware of the fact that my university experience from that point was going to look very different than my peers. And as someone who It has not always, Pam, been innately easy for me to ask for help in my life. That's not been a muscle that I flexed a lot
Mhm,
to that point in time in my life. And I remember the moment sitting and thinking, okay, Jax, you cannot do this alone. You're going to need to ask for help now.
mhm,
And I remember my professors, my first year of university, being immensely supportive when I wandered my butt into their office and said, here's what I am up against as a freshman in university. And I know nothing about being someone's power of attorney. And I coincidentally know nothing about a university career. I'm new here. I am
mhm,
brand new here in both of these, titles, student and power of attorney. And it might be a little bit more of an uphill journey for me than other students, and I may need to ask for grace along the way.
mhm.
And I had some incredible mentors and some
Wow.
incredible teachers who were, my advocates when I was advocating for others.
Mhm,
And it's very full circle for me to now say that I'm an adjunct professor within UBCO, and they contract me to support in some of these fourth year classes on campus.
wow.
And what an opportunity to get to be back on campus with a decade plus more experience than when I was there the first time. And
Mhm,
I really hold my time on campus in such high regard for how supported I was. And I effort to be that now for those alongside me, my team, my sons, my husband, my friends, because I was really shown by example how to do that by, those around me.
Now, this is such an incredible thing. Our fathers sound very similar in terms of my dad was also extremely hardworking, always kind of two
Yeah.
jobs, pushed. He created so much in his life. He's a brilliant man. And I inadvertently took from that, though, that my worth is associated with my work, and that asking for help was weak, that you could just figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's taken some events that took me to my knees where I had no other choice but to ask for help, to learn that that's, collaboration is the way. And so this leads me to this question. I really wonder what you think about this. There's a lot of talk out there about self-care nowadays. It's a buzzword, self-care buzzwords,
Yeah.
I guess, too. Um, and I actually am coming to believe that those terms are actually maybe problematic because I think that we heal in community and connection.
Mm.
And it's more about community care. How do we hold the community up? And how do we learn to ask for help when we need it and allow ourselves to be receptive? And then to also look for where we can help, because when we say self-care, it's like it's all on me. I need to figure this out, and I guess I got to take another bubble bath or meditate. But it's not necessary. Sometimes it is just asking for help, realizing that we have these pillars around us, and it's a lean on me kind of moment that changes everything. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. I feel, well, Pam, you're so wonderful. This is, I feel a very timely and important conversation. And while I agree with you, I tend to reach for the words and marry them together, community care, far
Mhm,
more often than self-care, but perhaps that's an insight into my lens, because that, akin to you, is has been my lived and living experience
mhm,
of where I have healed
mhm.
personally, is amongst others. Oh, I always forget that this new app does this, the thumbs up when you put the thumbs up. I'm not sure if you saw that come through
Yeah,
on your end,
yeah.
but I also am aware that it's not everyone's way in
Mhm,
um I, like I said at the beginning, I'm self-defined, people powered. And
mhm,
so I find that care and that solace and nourishment in community. And not everyone is that way. Even, my husband, as an example, he is, he loves that time solo. where he
Mhm.
can be nourished, loves to be out in community, but also loves, a quiet pocket of time to himself. And I
Mhm.
think, when we can find the balance as individuals, it starts, in my opinion, with self awareness
Mhm.
of, how do you heal? And
Mhm.
how do you heal most effectively and most efficiently? Is that, how much of your healing, what's the percentage of, you know, community care that you need? Who's your spirit team? Your doctor, your naturopath, your psychologist, and this is
In
timely,
my case,
your
my
dog.
native shaman.
I feel as though she knows when to, she knows energetically when to be around, you know.
Yes.
who are the people in your orbit who really give you that, like, very depth of care,
Mhm.
where you can be your healthiest self? And if that is sometimes on your own, then excellent. But being, honest with yourself about your needs, and
Mhm.
then, walking towards that accordingly, I feel is important. um yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think as I get older, I need more time alone, certainly.
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
need more time and space. The more work that I do with groups of humans, I need more time to recover, and that balance shifts. So I have to be checking in with that a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but what I hear a lot from people along the way, I'm sure you've heard this, and this is not my experience, but I hear Kelowna's clicky and it's hard to break into. And I'm sure that other towns have people that say those things. But what I have witnessed or noticed is that often people behavior is always to protect or preserve or prevent. And so they'll put up barriers to protect themselves from perceived rejection. Um,
Mm.
and then in doing so, isolate themselves from the very thing that could help or heal. And I will, I have personally found that it's my responsibility to go out and make connections. I can't just wait they're not going to come to me on the couch. And
Yes.
they're not gonna
Yeah.
just show up at my door
Yeah.
and say, "Hey, Pam, do you want to be friends?" I actually have to make a concerted effort. But in doing so, it's not just for me, it's also for those other people who might not be as um, confident to go out and make introductions or share, to use this one skill that I have. I'm comfortable with people, to go out and find those that aren't and welcome and become, I guess what I'm trying to say, I could say this more succinctly. We need belonging to heal.
Mm.
And if you want to belong, become a place where others belong.
Yeah,
And
I love that. I recently, and I mean, to your um to your early comment about, you know, this region or this city being clicky, it's just not a rhetoric that I buy into at
yeah.
all. And again, maybe an insight into my lens, but I really believe that to be quite um a low vibrational thought pattern.
Yeah.
And I just don't, that's not my frequency. I agree with you in, you have to take accountability
Mhm.
for, if that's been your lived experience, what can you perhaps change?
Mhm.
What environment can shift? If the environment that you're currently existing in feels that way, find a new environment. Uh,
Yes. Yeah,
Find a
we're
new
not
environment.
trees. We're not rooted to one community. I have
Yeah.
to say, we've been at several events together with extraordinary, beautiful, connected,
Yeah.
generous women holding and men holding each other up, celebrating one another. That's been
Yeah.
my as lived experience because that's
Yeah.
the lens that I choose to put over my RAS.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if the environment you're existing in is feeling clicky, find a better environment. Find
Yeah.
an environment or a circle or an orbit where it doesn't feel that way. But I agree with you about belonging. I recently kind of said at our last open space event that we hosted, this open space being the community counseling sessions we do quarterly with Third Space Charity, who is phenomenal, that belonging from my lens is survival. And the
Mhm.
English major in me, I said, really wants this to be a word. Belonging is also thrival.
Mm.
And when we can feel that sense of belonging, it's so vastly important. I've long come from the mentality that loneliness is one of the hardest human conditions. And it was part of the reason we created what we created, so
Mhm.
that we could effort towards this wholesome sense of belonging for as many human beings as possible.
Well, you've inspired me. I've been long ago been asked to create a women's circle at Shift Power Yoga. And I just had so much on my plate that I was, balancing my energy. It
Mm.
seemed like another thing that I just didn't have the bandwidth for it. But I thought about you and your team and what you do. And I sent an email to my whole team at Shift Power Yoga and said, how many of you would be supportive in community that we took turns leading a monthly women's circle where, we described all the things that we want to have happen, but basically a place for people to come belong, to share, to have interesting conversations. And my whole team was like, hell yes. When can we start? And our first one starts this month. And I really honor and acknowledge you because you are a trailblazer. And I think myself a trailblazer, and I also know my capacity and my humanness. But uh, I had been kind of finding a. There's an expression that my teacher Baron uses: find a way or find an excuse.
Ah,
And I was finding excuses because I was, and then, but watching what you did, I was like, there's a way, and we're going to do this. And
where there is a will, there is a way. I
yeah,
believe that
yeah,
wholeheartedly.
the answer to how is yes.
Yes, congratulations on this group.
Thank you. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm on the west side of Kelowna, there isn't a lot over on this side for community events, and I wanted to do something that was alcohol free, that was consistent, that brings people together, and invites everyone from all walks of life to join in and feel a place of belonging. And I think that my hope is that people listening to this might start thinking about how they could perhaps become a place where others can belong as well.
Ah, very beautifully said. I agree.
So tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about how you have adapted to motherhood of two young boys, and how has that shifted your vision, if it has at all?
Oh, goodness. Well, I am a woman who I innately have such an appetite for both motherhood and business.
Mhm.
My oldest son is about to be 8, and our business is about to be 10. I don't know how to not be both,
Mhm.
um, in my being. Entering into my entrance into motherhood was a very, again, fascinating journey. I thought I had mapped out, how that was going to flow and go, and balancing work and being a mother, which has always, been a question on my mind. And then our oldest son was born at 2 pounds and
Oh.
found me 5 weeks in the intensive care with him.
Mhm.
And those 5 weeks, my first weeks of motherhood, completely shifted my vision for my life and for my business,
Mhm.
in the way of, the nurses and the doctors inside the intensive care in that pocket of time uh, were very key for me in a very key chapter. I thought my definition of community
Mhm.
was sound at that point in time, and two, my definition of how to elevate community was sound,
Mhm.
until I was served by those intensive care doctors and nurses, and they showed me and taught me a different way of
Mhm.
showing up and how to be in service to community. And I shifted the vision for my business 6 months after that, and rewrote the business plan to
Mm.
have the business be as in service to community as humanly possible from that point in time, and bought out full shares in my business,
Mm.
of a business partner that I had at that time, who um, I was just very clear on my vision of how I wanted the business to exist in community after that learning. And I was very unapologetic about it. And that was year 3 in business, and seeing how much possibility there was for us to utilize this brand to be in service to community. And since then, we have collaborated quite a lot with the KGH Foundation,
Mhm,
which was where our son was born.
mhm,
We, with one of our investors, who's a dear friend of ours, put on a community slow pitch tournament annually
mhm,
for the last 5 years. A few of the years, it put $250,000 into the Kelowna General Hospital Foundation, and that opportunity to serve and to utilize the brand alongside some very key and generous and beautiful community partners
mhm.
has been one of the greatest gifts of my life.
Mm.
Motherhood and dancing between entrepreneur and mom is just quite a ride. It is quite a
Yeah,
ride, and
I
one that
love
I
how you approach it. As you hear so often, one or the other, and people trying to find balance. And I say that
Mm.
it's not, it's all part of the totality of who you are. And
Yeah, and balance, I it's come to be, it's interesting. I have my water bottle here beside me, and so these 4 icons that are governed under our brand, for a very long while, we talked about the rhetoric of these representing balance.
Mhm,
Balance in season, balance in the sustainable way that we live life in the Okanagan.
mhm.
Um, and the older that I get as well, and the wiser that I'm grateful to grow, we know that balance is just sometimes quite a myth. I believe more now I believe it to be integration, like
Mm.
integration of motherhood into business, integration of the seasons in our lifestyle. Um, it's a word that I carry with me more often than not. I kind of, not that I have an aversion to the word balance, but lately I'm holding on more lovingly. I suppose the English major in me, words matter to me. And so integration is a word that I carry with me more so than balance in this season of my life.
I love that word. I am very much like you. I actually, when I was writing my book, I would sit with a thesaurus for for hours and try to find the perfect word that felt the way that I wanted to convey the feeling that I was going for, the word, the energy, the vibration, the sound, the feeling that it conveyed, the imagery, all of that's so important. And I
So maybe
love,
this is why I love talking to you so much.
yeah.
Every time I've had opportunity to have a conversation with you, I just find it so rich, and yeah, that makes sense.
So integration, I love that because integrity is wholeness and it's unbroken, unimpaired, complete sound without impairment. It's all of it. It's like the
Yeah.
whole is the goal. I like to use the
Mm.
term. I have a lot of people come to me in my coaching practice and they say, I'm looking for work-life balance. And I say, I can't give that to you. What I can teach you is something that's a much higher vibration, and that's equanimity. And
Love
so
that.
whether life isn't going to be balanced, life isn't going to be fair. Fair's made up.
Oh,
And
yeah.
sometimes we have a tsunami come at us and we can't plan for that and there's no balance of anything, but we can meet the day with
Mhm.
equanimity. We can become equanimous in how we show up in the times when things are imbalanced. I think about balance as a slack line. We step out on it every day and go, okay, where am I right now? And then
Yeah.
you've got to recreate it with the next step. So, integration and integration equanimously or with equanimity, I think those are such a beautiful melding of our concepts.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And isn't it too so easier said than done sometimes,
Oh.
I think again it comes back to that. So many of the leaders who I am fortunate to move and work alongside are so incredibly self-aware of that integration piece of,
Mhm,
setting yourself up for success with your systems and your
mhm,
scheduling, and to ensure that you can integrate well. Little things like, how are you preparing your environment as you're moving from one task to the next,
Mhm.
in a world where we're all multitasking far more than I think we're willing to admit. But the the preparation, even coming into this conversation with you, I was preparing by, you know, Palo Santo, smudging
I was
my
burning
space.
sage.
And just, grounding in, okay, this excellent conversation that we're going to have. And then, my day will move on from this great conversation, and allowing myself, that pocket of time to settle in. Oh, what a great conversation with Pam. And then, being self aware of how many minutes do I want to give myself before I move on to the next task?
Mm,
What do I need for nourishment? Do I need water? Do I need 5 minutes of prep time before my next meeting? And allowing myself that spaciousness, that
mhm,
open space, if you will,
mhm.
to integrate into the next task. From,
I love that.
even in motherhood, I know tonight I'll have my meetings or the things that I'll do in my day. I'll get my movement in. Then with my kids tonight, I'll switch hats from, business owner to mother, and I'll be at the soccer field and then at the hockey rink.
Yes.
And, it just that's the season of my life as it is right now, and I'm very grateful for that, but also very aware as I move about the world that that requires preparation of energy as I move about the world.
It's really, without that, we are the sum total of our reactions. And what you're speaking about is intentionality, but you're bringing it to a different level than I have even considered it. I do a process called segmental intending. And
Ooh, I love
so
that.
so I look at each segment of my day and I think about, and I actually learned this through yoga. Someone said to me once many years ago that about 80% of injuries that happen in yoga happen in the transitions because we're so focused on the pose that we lose sight of when we're getting there. And immediately I thought about the transitions in life. And
Mm.
a lot of people have difficulty in transitions. Think about a child like from their pajamas to breakfast to school. It's not that they don't want to go to school, but they have difficulty in the transitions.
Yeah.
And so I started to think about, well, how can I use the transitions between my tasks to think about who do I want to be? How do I want to feel? What do I want to contribute? And what do I need to do to get my energy right to do that? Driving to the yoga studio, just thinking about, I want to be a contribution and a pillar and receptive and a co-creator. And I get in the energy of all of that, which is wonderful. But you just added something where I feel like we're bookends here a little bit, because what you just added was like to take a moment before I segmentally intend to the next part of my life to go, okay, integrate that now.
Yes. And
Wow.
I find it interesting and really sincerely beautiful, Pam, that the way we began this conversation was talking about the transition of seasons
Yeah.
from one season to the next with the rain.
Yeah.
And we are not separate from
Yes.
the weather or, Earth and Mother Nature. And
Mhm.
so she transitions beautifully from
Right.
spring into summer. Well, where we live,
Yes.
anyhow. And this
Yes.
is, again, insight into my lens of what I love about this region is, today it's rain and summer will come and we will be in bloom. But,
Yeah.
Mother Nature here allowing itself to move through those transitions. And
And
what a way to end the conversation in where we began it, talking about
right?
transition and integration. And yeah.
So beautiful. What would you what would you like to leave people with, Jax? If you could give them, I mean, you're a beacon in this community. You're someone that people look up to. You're someone that people admire. And if you could give someone one piece of wisdom, and I
Hmm.
use wisdom instead of advice, one piece of wisdom that would help lead them to living their most authentic lives, what would you say?
Hmm. Breathe.
Mm,
Breathe. I would say start with your why.
mm.
I love Simon Sinek's Start with Why. I think if you're going to
Great
dive,
book.
oh, it's such a great book. I think, it's to give any one individual or a mass group of people advice, my advice would be, start introspectively. Start with your why and knowing where you want to go in life. Start with your self-awareness of what are you efforting towards, whether it's in your professional life or your personal life. When you know where you want to be going and why you want to be going there, it makes it a lot easier to make decisions and stepping off points in getting to that place.
Yeah,
Um,
I
that
love that.
self-awareness, and yeah,
That's
that
like
would,
like having a true north, having a lighthouse to walk towards. I agree
yeah.
with you. It makes our decisions much easier. Does this lead me towards that place or away from it? And we
And
may have to say no to some people and places and things along the way that are challenging, but with that lighthouse ahead of us, we can keep, as you say, efforting toward the thing that matters most to us.
and it is infinitely easier said than done. And I would add on to it, again, being honest with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and in those whys and in those, hopes and dreams and efforts. It's not always easy
No,
to
and
be 100% honest with yourself and with those around you. But if you can get that piece right as a stepping off point, I think really incredibly impactful things will happen. That's my belief.
I love that. And I would say that for me, I know that I've been very clear on my why all along, but as I gain more wisdom, as I gain more experience, I go back
Mm.
in and sometimes I have fooled myself. There's another layer, a blinder that was on, and it was actually, I was seeking someone or some piece of validation somewhere. And as to add to what you're saying, I think we have to get still
Mm,
and really be brave enough to listen for the truth from within.
absolutely.
And then the greatest pathway to authenticity is like what you're saying, is honor that truth. When you hear it, I think of it like a little child, and it's my responsibility to go take its hand and say, okay, I'll take you there.
Absolutely.
Let's go. Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah.
Well, I want to say that I am so grateful to be walking this path in this community with you,
Mm.
and blessed to get to cross paths on occasion and hopefully more occasions in the future. And I just appreciate everything that you bring to the community, but also your innate wisdom. It's beyond your years. It's beyond it's beyond the scope of anything that life itself, your as lived experience, could have taught you. I believe that you're a deeply spiritual being and aware spiritually
Yeah.
and receptive to that. And it really comes through in your energy and how you speak about life. And I just so appreciate that and embrace that about you. So thank you for sharing that with the world. I love my fellow weirdos in the world.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Pam, and just all that you birth into our world, and for having me a part of this conversation and all of the conversations that we've had opportunity to have. And you've been an inspiration for me in many of the ways that you've shown up in the world as well. And I know I've shared those with you, side of desk when we've had opportunity to stand alongside each other. And but yeah, you make me a better leader in how you show up as well. So thank you for having me, and thank you for all that you put out into the world as well.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
for those of you who like the show, please rate the show, please share the show. If you know someone who would benefit from this conversation, send it to them. My goal is to share good work with the world that inspires you to live your most authentic life. Until next time.